I was looking for a kind of serial adventure hero, and I wanted to do something that was very action-packed, and I came up with the idea of Indiana Jones, and at the same time I came up with the idea of doing Star Wars. After Star Wars, I was on the beach with Steven, and he was talking to me about how he wanted to do a James Bond movie.
And George said, well, don't waste your time because I've got something better than that. And he said, this is better than Bond. It's called Raiders of the Lost Ark. So we had the title all worked out. And he told me the story. And it wasn't a fleshed out story. It was kind of a concept of this archaeologist guy, this adventurer, goes around the world looking for antiquities at great personal risk. And the antiquities might seem not to be that valuable, but they turn out to be, you know, things that either save the world or save the human race. And he began telling me the story about this character, and I became completely compelled by that and pretty much signed on to do the first one and wound up doing all three. The character of Indiana Jones was something that I had worked very hard on, and I didn't want to be safe with him. I didn't want him to be Dudley Do-Right with the perfect teeth, you know, the little twinkle of, you know, cinema magic when he smiles and the sun catches his mouth in a certain way.
When Steve and I started Indiana Jones, I wanted to have a fresh face to play the character, so he wasn't identified with any other kind of project or a movie star or anything. I wanted to have somebody who would be the character of Indiana Jones.
George and I both wanted Tom Selleck. He actually came in and tested and did a wonderful test. So we went ahead and hired Tom, and then CBS stepped in and said, wait, we have a contract with Tom Selleck to do a movie, a TV series that hasn't aired yet called Magnum P.I., and we're going to exercise that contract. So CBS actually blocked our efforts to put him in our movie, and they gave him Magnum P.I., which was a great thing for Tom. So Tom achieved, and then we were lucky later on down the line with Harrison.
I got a call one morning from George Lucas, who asked me to go over and meet Steven Spielberg regarding a film that he and Steven had developed together. I went over and met Steven. We spoke for maybe an hour or so. I left, and I got a phone call that they wanted me to do it.
And he was perfect for the part. I can't imagine anybody else in that part.
Chamber 3 was undisturbed, and the undisturbed chamber and the grave goods that were found in another, in the area, give us a...
Indiana Jones is a school teacher and an archaeologist and an adventurer. The fact that he behaves heroically under certain circumstances is a part of his nature, but it is not a descriptor of his character.
An archaeologist who, on one hand, was kind of a treasure hunter, but on the other hand had some values that were tested. And I wanted, one of the center pieces was that he would get involved in these treasure hunts that were of mystical objects.
George, of course, you know, is a professor himself in all sorts of mythology. And so George brought every aspect of the supernatural and the occult to the Indiana Jones series.
That was really the primary plot thrust of all these movies, was that he would be involved in some supernatural treasure hunt.
It makes the movies a little more special, you know. It's not just, you know, the practical hero who has to know how to engineer a mine so it doesn't cave in on him when he's digging for his antiquity. Harrison was very tenacious about wanting to be seen on camera as Indiana Jones, being a hero and being an action figure, not just being a guy, you know, in a close-up who takes the whip and goes like this, and in the long shot, you cut to a stuntman swinging across a chasm.
I try to do as much as I can because I think it's important for the audience to have continuity with the character in these physical moments.
Harrison is very game for doing his own stunts, and obviously we can't put an actor in a situation where he could possibly be injured. So we were very careful to make sure that he didn't get hurt.
Here we go! Get ready!
Indiana Jones is going out!
Well, I like Karen Allen because she was real spunky. And I had seen her in Animal House a couple of years before. And Karen was really spunky in that, and she had a devilish kind of smile. And Harrison had the same kind of smile. I said, why don't we put two demons together, these two people who have a little demonic twinkle in their eyes.
Will Jones, least you haven't forgotten how to show a lady a good time.
Boy, you're something!
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Until I get back my $5,000, you're gonna get more than you bargained for. I'm your goddamn partner!
Karen was terrific. She had a great point of view, which was very consistent with her character. She was tough, like Marion, direct, like Marion. I thought she was terrific in the part, and I really enjoyed working with her.
Well, I have to be going now, Renee. Perhaps we'll meet someday under better circumstances.
We meet again, Fräulein.
We have Nazis in the first film and the third film, and it really comes out of the period in which this was done.
Well, the Nazis are the personification of evil, you know, and that was an idea that was very, very early in George's thinking.
Part of the original idea of putting it in the 30s and everything was that Hitler was also very interested in supernatural artifacts.
I think Hitler felt that if he could possess all the power of the unknown, he would be omnipotent.
So if you have an archaeologist that's going after supernatural artifacts, and you know that Hitler is doing the same thing, it gives you a ready antagonist who everybody understands, and who everybody understands is very deadly.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
I think the issue of snakes comes out of, as we went through putting segments together, we said, oh, well, he'll fall down into a snake pit because that's what heroes do.
Because I like snakes. I'm not really that afraid of snakes, but I know people are afraid of snakes. And I thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool if Indiana Jones, you know, is like in this room with 2,000 snakes?
I have no personal revulsion for snakes. It was just fun, interesting.
Unfortunately, when we did bring 2,000 snakes to a beautiful Norman Reynolds set, The Well of the Souls, incredible set, you know, tremendous statues and a lot of area. 2,000 snakes, basically, you can put it in one corner and you can have an empty floor. So we had a lot of rubber mechanical snakes, but the problem is, you know, they put like 40 rubber snakes, you know, on all linked together on one wire. So it was like 40 snakes doing a kind of, you know, syncopated June Taylor dance at the same time, and that didn't work. So one day I just said, well, can we get 7,000 to 10,000 snakes in here tomorrow? They went to every single gardening shop, you know, in Greater London, and the next day brought in 7,000 snakes to augment the already 2,000 live snakes and about 3,000 mechanical snakes that I basically threw out. And then the floor was covered in snakes. It was pretty amazing to try to, you know, pick your way through, just to get to the camera, to pick your way through the snakes.
We had some that bit and weren't poisonous, and we had, of course, a cobra.
Done under close supervision between the crew, the actors, and the cobra and their handlers.
The scene that inspired me on Raiders, and where I really started Raiders, was the scene, the truck chase. And the idea of a guy jumping off his horse onto a truck was an image that I remember from when I was a young boy watching serials, because they seemed to do it in every episode. And so for me, that's still my favorite scene, I think.
I love the moment where the monkey goes Heil Hitler. You know, I think that's nuts. That's just so nuts. That was George's idea, by the way. You know, take somebody like George to come up with a nutty idea like that. It was my favorite moments in the picture. I like the whole scene where the ball chases Harrison, the big boulder chasing him down the path. I like Harrison's scene with Marion, the love scene, where there's no place she can kiss him that doesn't hurt, until he starts pointing out areas that don't hurt, and it kind of gets into a love scene, and just when you think they're going to really go for it, he falls asleep. And she says,
We never seem to get a break, do we?
Raiders is an interesting film, because most of the films I've made, I've had no idea whether people were going to relate to them or not.
I thought we were making an entertaining film that might well be successful.
Unlike Jaws, where the audience loved and they screamed a whole bunch of times, this movie, the audience never shut up. They just started, at the beginning, they began to applaud and laugh and scream and titter and talk with each other and talk at the screen, and it was like an event.
I was so convinced it was a crowd pleaser that people were going to love this movie because it had so many fun things in it.
I don't know, it was just maybe the right time for a film like that to come along. Maybe we were nostalgic and looking to go back to an old-fashioned popcorn B movie, and all Raiders was, and any of the Indiana films have been, are B movies, and that's all we intended them to be.
We made 3 pretty good movies.
I'm not quite sure how we decided we wanted to put Temple of Doom ahead of Raiders in picking the years, but I think it sort of had to do with part wanting to tell a little bit more of a backstory, part wanting to kind of avoid the Nazis in that one. It is a little bit darker than the Indiana Jones film that we had seen the first time.
George wanted Temple of Doom to demand a lot more of its audience than Raiders had.
It was an experiment on our part to explore the genre and explore the character and to see how far we could push the boundaries and still make it an Indiana Jones film.
He wanted the second picture, like Empire Strikes Back, he wanted a darkness in the second Indiana Jones film to kind of push the envelope a little bit further toward the dark side.
It's a Thuggee ceremony. They're worshiping Kali.
Kali Ma, Kali Ma, Shakti de, Bali chadhao tere aage, sweekar karo.
We had made a film that was darker and stronger and had a little bit more violence in it than the other one, and it did not fit in the PG category. It wasn't really strong enough to be an R.
And so I went to Jack Valenti, and I was the one who suggested to Jack a PG-13 rating. And I said I would endorse it, I would talk to the MPAA, and can't we have a rating called PG-13 that's in between PG and R? And Valenti agreed, and we actually were able to get the rating approved by the MPAA.
Leave him alone, you bastards!
One of the things we wanted to do, and we were all in very much agreement, is not to make Indy a kind of cardboard character.
I always think that the obligation of the filmmakers, and certainly my personal obligation when I'm doing a character over again, or yet again, depending on your point of view, is to bring some new knowledge and understanding of that character to the audience.
I think Indiana Jones' character, as I said before, is a guy who is kind of has some character flaws. You know, and is not as charming as he'd like to be. In moments he must be, and other times he's perfectly charming. I think he's an unpredictable character.
Put the gun away, Sonny. Now, I suggest you give me what you owe me.
In Raiders, the character, the female lead, is very tough, very strong, very independent. And so we wanted to not repeat that character over and over again. So we wanted one that was completely out of her element, was not at home in the jungle, was not an outdoor person.
In looking for Willie Scott, you know, she was a different kind of character than Marion Ravenwood. Marion Ravenwood was a two-fisted hellraiser.
Marion was a very self-possessed, rigorous character, and the character that Kate played was a less self-confident kind of character.
Willie Scott was more of a spoiled brat. She's kind of like a 1930s movie star prima donna. And so I was looking at a lot of movie star prima donna types in my search for Willie Scott. And I have been looking for about 2 or 3 months and really hadn't found anybody that was ready to cast in the film. A couple of candidates, among which was actually Sharon Stone, who read for me and had come in. And she was high on my list, not because she's a prima donna, but because she could play that. She was really a good actress. And when Kate Capshaw came in, I didn't know Kate from anybody. I mean, she just walked into the office. But she brought a light into the office that I had never seen before. I mean, I was kind of blinded by this kind of light that came into the office. It was all from her smile, by the way. And I went to Harrison, brought Harrison the tape, put the tape in at Harrison's house and said, "This is Willie Scott." And Harrison said, "I agree." And George saw the tape, and George said, "Yes, but I want her to be blonde." Because Karen Allen had the dark hair. Willie Scott has to be blonde. So poor Katie had to get her hair completely bleached like Jean Harlow.
Kate was remarkable. She's a delightful comic actress. wonderfully expressive and intelligent about how to tell the story.
Come on!
I don't want to go! Who are you?
Wow, holy smoke! Crash landing!
Short round. Step on it.
Okie dokie, Dr. Jones, hold on to your potatoes! There's a kid driving the car!
We needed a young boy, an Oriental boy, to play the role, and we did cast around a lot to try to find somebody. He was a perfect find because he was really bright and capable and funny, and casting young people is sometimes quite difficult to get somebody who can really act and really has the personality of the part.
He was somebody who sort of came in. We had an open call, and I believe he came in through an open call where you let anybody who wants to be an actor show up if they're the right age. I had looked at like 200, 300 kids, and he by far was the best for the part. He was like a 11, 12-year-old kid going on 38.
Stay behind me, Short Round. Step where I step. And don't touch anything.
I step where you step. I touch nothing.
We had written a mine train chase in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and in trying to get the budget down to an affordable figure, I was slashing whole set pieces. And one of the scenes that I slashed was this big mine cart chase.
So we took it out, and it was sort of sitting there on the shelf. So when we went to do the Temple of Doom, we said, oh, we got to put the mine chase in there.
Hurry! Hurry up!
Again, those kinds of set pieces are things that you say, well, I always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to do a car chase. I've always wanted to do an airplane chase. I've always wanted to do, so you save those things and you find the right opportunity to put them in there. Ultimately, we wanted to have a scene with a rope bridge. Again, it's traditional in these kinds of serial films, and part of it is an homage to the genre, which makes the whole idea of the serial and being in jeopardy much more interesting than just, a superhero or somebody who it's easy to have them get out of the whatever mess they get into.
Well, I became quite comfortable on the rope bridge, which was an actual rope bridge over an actual chasm. I remember that both George and Stephen were very leery of it.
I didn't like shooting on that bridge because that was not a special effect. There was not a matte painting below us. There was a 1,000-foot gorge and a drop to the rocks below. And I have acrophobia. I hate heights, and I never once went across the bridge. I could go about 85 to 90 feet out from either end, but I couldn't go to the middle. And I would have to get in a car and drive 1.75 miles to get to the other side of the canyon, to then get back on the other side of the bridge to get a shot. And that's how scared I was of that bridge.
Molaram, prepare to meet Kali in hell. Oh! Put out away!
I think my favorite scene in the Temple of Doom is when Indy gets trapped in the little room with the spikes coming down, the ceiling coming down, and Kate has to come in and put her hand in a hole full of bugs to stop it from happening.
Willie, we are going to die!
It's moving!
It's funny and it just keeps building on itself. It's the perfect kind of Indiana Jones scene.
Bugs, snakes, rats, it's all the same to me.
I said, cut it out!
It's just another day at the office.
My favorite moments in the movie is where Short Round and Indy are playing cards, and Willie is being scared by every jungle creature she encounters. A lizard, an owl lands right in front of her, another lizard in a tree. I mean, she is just terrified. She's running back and forth. They're playing cards, and of course, Short Round catches Indy cheating.
Hey, you cheat, Dr. Jones, you cheat! You cheat full car!
What do you mean?
You cheat full car! 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 You cheat Okay? Now, no mistake. No mistake.
Mistake.
I'm very little. You cheat very big. Dr. Jones, you cheat. You pay money. You owe me 10 cents.
Look at this. Look at this.
I think our collaboration was pretty much the same on all three movies. You know, we give and take and share the responsibility, and you know, we're very good collaborators.
We were having a good time.
George and I really had the same relationship through all three films, you know, one of tremendous respect and confidence and fun. I mean, we had a really fun time making these pictures together.
By the time we got to the third film, we were struggling with how to make it different from the first two.
I really wanted Indiana Jones in the third, what I thought was going to be the final installment of the Indiana Jones series, to go after an antiquity more rare than the Shankar stones or the Lost Ark of the Covenant. I wanted him to go after his own father, and that was going to be his rescue mission. That was going to be the antiquity that he retrieves.
Junior?
Yes, sir.
It is you, Junior. Don't call me that, please.
By putting the father and son together, it lent itself more toward a humorous portrayal of the film.
Dr. Jones. Yes?
And I think that was one of the things, since we've been so dark with the Temple of Doom, that we really wanted to go in the opposite direction and make this one lighter than Raiders of the Lost Ark.
11 o'clock! And 11 o'clock! What happens at 11 o'clock?
It's a very contentious relationship based on, you know, a childhood where it was the father who was the adventurer explorer and who was always leaving the kid at home.
It represents I think, a typical father-son relationship.
And not unlike my father and myself in real life. The fact that my dad and I had a tremendous coming together years after I moved out of the house because school was over and I could live on my own. And so in a sense that Indy and his father kind of follow a very similar curve as me and my dad.
Did I ever tell you to eat up, go to bed, wash your ears, do your homework? No, I respected your privacy, and I taught you self-reliance.
What you taught me was that I was less important to you than people who'd been dead for 500 years in another country. And I learned it so well that we've hardly spoken for 20 years.
You left just when you were becoming interesting.
Who could intimidate Harrison Ford? Not some English character actor from the Royal Shakespeare Company, but Sean Connery is Harrison Ford's match, and he's the only person I can imagine on the planet Earth to play Indiana Jones' father.
The James Bond film was kind of the father of the Indiana Jones films, because that's how Steve and I first started talking about it, was that he wanted to do a James Bond film. To use James Bond as the father of Indiana Jones, it seemed like the perfect, you know, outside of the real movie, ironic humor.
Dad! Oh, Dad! Oh, Dad! Ah! Head for the fireplace! Oh.
I loved working with Sean. I thought he was the perfect foil. He brought great quality and depth to that character.
I suddenly remembered my Charlemagne. Let my armies be the rocks and the trees and the birds in the sky.
I kept thinking about what was Indiana Jones like as a young man. I mean, Stephen admired River Phoenix's work, so that he immediately wanted him to play the young Indiana Jones.
When I met him, he was very much looked like Harrison as a younger guy. I just added the scar on River's chin and was able to lay pipe by letting the whip, when he tries to keep the line back, the whip comes back and cuts his chin, so we could source the scar.
Well, first of all, I loved River, and I visited the set when his part of the movie was shot. I thought it was great casting.
And that was always fun, because it was really fun sort of having a chance to do a prequel inside of a sequel, or inside of a continuing adventure. Oh, look at that. The man who made the greatest impression on Indy was not his father, who was a very good man, but almost as a counter-reaction to the good man his father was, he had found a bad man and kind of took the idea of the hat and the leather jacket from him.
It doesn't mean you have to like it.
And so when I see Indy now in his leather jacket and his fedora, I think that that's a very strong statement he's made against how he was treated by his own father.
We wanted a heroine in The Last Crusade, again, who was different. In this case, the idea of making her the villain.
Someone who could be a terrific deceiver, you know, to be a love interest for Indiana Jones who turns into his worst enemy.
Is that what you think of me? I believe in the Grail, not the swastika.
You stood up to be countered with the enemy of everything that the Grail stands for. Who gives a damn what you think?
You do!
All I have to do is squeeze.
All I have to do is squeeze.
It was fun to be able to play with a kind of love story between two enemies.
Who then turns into an ally at the very end, and tragically is you know, is overcome by greed, which is something that George and I always giggle about. You know, let the greedy perish, let them fall into the abyss.
Give me your hand, give me your other hand!
No, Allison brought the necessary complication to the character, giving us the opportunity to see the good and bad side and to believe both of them. It was a tricky part to play. I think she did a wonderful job of it.
Papers, please. Papers? Of course. Run.
Yes.
Papers, got it here. Just finished reading it myself.
I'd originally offered to Danny DeVito to play Sala in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then Danny couldn't do it. It turned out he couldn't do it, but he was my first choice for Sala. I found John Rhys Davies, who was a brilliant Shakespearean actor, has almost a Pavarotti quality about him, and just a wonderful sense of humor, just a great laugh, a great spirit, you know, Indy, you know, that sort of thing, and you want to hug the guy, and I just thought he was perfect to play Sala.
John Rhys Davies is a terrific actor, brought real scale and humor to that part. It's a very important part, a very important relationship with Indiana Jones.
Oh, rats.
Well, it's in the first film we had snakes, in the second film we had bugs, in the third film we decided what else is left.
Once you find a successful kind of a series, the audiences start to make demands on you. They start to say, okay, where's the equivalent of the snakes from the first movie? Okay, you had the bugs in the second movie. That was like the snakes. So what are you going to do now for the third movie? You had snakes, you had bugs. Now you're going to give us
rats. Okay.
We called it our phobia scene. We sort of have the one scene with the critters that nobody likes to be around.
I had some experience with rats. I raised lab rats when I was about 15, 16 years old. So I was used to handling rats and working, being around them. I wasn't put off by it. The smell got to be a little weird after a while. We were right on the edge of a health issue with the rats and the water and the rat feces and all the rest of it. It became a bit of a murky soup to step into that water. But everyone came through it fine. Nobody got sick.
Of all three films, Last Crusade was the one film that came off without a hitch. You know, I storyboard all these movies. And in those days, I pretty much stuck to the storyboards. The entire tank chase was verbatim what the storyboards were. I sat down and without really a screenplay to go by, I did about, I don't know, 500 storyboards and made up the entire tank chase on paper in drawings, like a comic book. And then we simply looked at each storyboard and wrote the screenplay to match the storyboards.
How much fun it was for me and how uncomfortable it was for Sean. I think the motorcycle sidecar scenes were great fun to shoot. Sean had to suffer being stuffed into the sidecar and driven at a great rate of speed over mountain trails, and he was great about it, actually. Terrific. We had fun.
My favorite moments are the relationship between father and son. I mean, there's a lot of very good scenes. I think the one in the castle, you know, where Indy rescues him for the first time is one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Dead end.
There's got to be a secret door, a passageway, some.
I find that if I just sit down and think... The solution presents itself.
You come out of the gate in like a thoroughbred with Act 1, which was Raiders of the Lost Ark. Then you got a really dark Act 2, which was Temple of Doom. Then you've got the rousing finish, which was Last Crusade. But I really think that we intend to do a fourth one.
One hopes so.
Well, we've gotten a couple scripts that we've worked out, and it's really a matter of getting Harrison and Stephen to agree on a script.
We've done 3 fairly good stories, and I just don't want the fourth Indiana Jones films to leave a bad taste in anyone's mouth. So I'm being a little more, and George and Harrison, we're all being a little more prejudicial about what the fourth movie will be like.
Well, I'm not sure I'd give out the story at this point, but we have a script, and it's all finished.